This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Polls open in Burkina Faso's presidential election overshadowed by security threat. Ethiopian national forces push towards a rebel stronghold. And the coronavirus pandemic and economic recovery plan in G20 summit. Welcome to Africa Live on CGTN with me, Beatrice Marshall, in Nairobi. Also coming up on the program, Nigeria plans to borrow another $750 million from the World Bank amid an economic recession. And in your sports, Caster Semenya to appeal to the European Court of Human Rights over testosterone ruling. The Ethiopian government has rebuffed an African Union effort to mediate in the ongoing conflict in the Tigray region. It says federal troops have seized another town in their march to take over the rebel-held regional capital. Let's now cross over to CGTN's Girum Chala. He's in Addis Ababa for us, the capital of Ethiopia. Girum, can you give us the latest on the fighting as well as the humanitarian situation in the country?
Well, Beatrice, the war in the north has been going on overnight as well. As you've said, another town has fell in the hands of the Ethiopian National Defense Force. First, they were reporting of the capture of Aksum and Adwa towns, strategic locations, by the way, and they were closing in the town of Adigrat. Now that town, Adigrat, is now under the control of the National Defense Force. And the reports also say that the army is marching to one of the strongest holds of the TPLF army, which is the Mekelle city itself. So there it is expected that there's going to be a heavy fighting because that's the strongest location, also strategic location for TPLF leadership. On the other hand, we have heard that the humanitarian situation in the country is going to be handled through a committee formed by the Prime Minister himself. This committee is going to oversee perhaps on those areas which are liberated, the delivery of basic amenities, including water, food, and also shelter, and more importantly, security for Ethiopian nationals. As we have said before, the Ethiopian government is now saying again that it calls on those people who have evicted from their places and are residing in Sudan at the moment to return back to their localities, because the government can guarantee support in any way possible, including their safety and security at the same time. But as war is continuing, Beatrice, we are also expecting more people to be evicted from their places or even be casualties of the ongoing war in the country. So we have to wait and see in the coming few days what's going to come out. But the humanitarian situation still is dire in the war front, Beatrice.
Well, the government has rejected African Union efforts to mediate in the conflict. What is the reason for this? Can you tell us more?
Well, Beatrice, as you've said, calls were coming from different directions, from the UN, for instance. And the African Union push is one of the strongest, calling it, this is an African problem, it needs an African solution. Cyril Ramaphosa, current chairperson of the African Union, who is also the president of South Africa, has already nominated 3 former African presidents to mediate the problem in the northern part of Ethiopia with the central government. But the Ethiopian government's stand is still stronger, and even today stronger than ever, saying that, well, mediations can work, but not now, because they asked 3 reasons that the government is rejecting this calls by the international community or the African Union for a dialogue with the northern part of its country. The first one, Beatrice, is saying that this northern front is a rebel. They are armed and they are attacking. They are using rockets to attack within the country, even making this war international by attacking Eritrea itself. So disarming them is the first priority. The second one is bringing those people who are behind this conflict into justice. And the third one is we have to replace them with a provisional administration in the Tigray regional state. Unless and otherwise, these three priorities are fulfilled, there will not be any negotiation that's going to happen, because this is a sub-national state. That's what they're saying, Beatrice.
All right, Girum Chala joining us there from Addis Ababa. Thank you. Voters have started casting their ballots in Burkina Faso's general election. The election is taking place amid growing insecurity. Attacks and threats of violence by militant groups have hampered the electoral process. Burkina Faso's Independent Electoral Commission was unable to register voters in more than 17% of the country. The growing presence of jihadist groups has followed President Roch-Marc Christian Kabore's throughout his first term. He is facing off against 12 other opponents in the presidential poll. CGTN's Joy Kiruki takes a closer look.
It is a race to the presidency. Candidates make their final pitches to the Burkinabe electorate. Incumbent President Roch-Marc Christian Kabore is determined to retain his seat through the People's Movement for Progress (MPP. He is facing off with 12 other candidates. One of his closest challengers is Union for Progress and Change candidate and opposition leader Zephyrin Diabre. Burkinabes, composed mainly of young people, have urged the future president to restore peace in the country. They have also called for the creation of a conducive environment for young people to find employment and thrive.
We are waiting for the new government to settle the security issue that is shaking the country without stability. The country will not have development, so we ask the new government to prioritize the safety of our fellow citizens. But also, the government must do everything to create opportunities for the youth. I think that's the priority for this country.
Throughout the 3 weeks of the campaigns, we carried out in-depth work throughout the country, especially with young people. This year, more than 50% of young people have registered to vote. This means that young people alone can elect a candidate. The priority of our country today is security, youth, and schooling of our children.
The Burkina Faso elections happens against the backdrop of COVID-19 and terrorist attacks. A total of 7.8 million registered voters will make their choice of president on 22nd November. Joy Kiruki Juma, CGTN.
Well, let's get more on this development. I'm joined by Malik Lingani, a political analyst. He's joining me via Skype from Ouagadougou. The country goes to the poll amidst a jihadist threat, with some areas unable to vote. How will this likely affect the outcome of the elections? Well, we will return to Malik Lingani a little bit later in our program if we can. For now, let's look at what's happening in Nigeria, where investigations are ongoing into the shooting of peaceful protesters in Lagos. Army Brigadier General Ahmed Taiwo is expected to appear for a second time for cross-examination before a judicial panel. He previously testified that soldiers only used blanks and no one died from the incident at the Lekki toll gate. Here is CGTN's Deji Badmos with more on that story.
This would be the second time the Army Brigadier General will be appearing before the judicial panel. Last week, it took about 3 hours to give the side of the military on what happened at the Lekki toll gate on the night of October 20th. Backing his presentation with several pictures and videos, the Army General maintained soldiers at the scene of the protest after a curfew was declared only fired blanks and not live bullets at protesters, also implying that no one died from the incident. The lawyer to the protesters is therefore expected to cross-examine the military general and try to disprove his case. Everyone has been following the activities of the judicial panel very keenly, as people want to know what actually happened the night of October 20th at that toll gate, which was the birthplace of what is now popularly known as the NSAS protest. But beyond the October protest, the panel is also investigating alleged police brutality and abuse over the years with a view to recommending compensation for victims. We have similar panels across almost all of Nigeria's 36 states and the Federal Capital Territory. They are expected to hear cases for 6 months, after which they will wind down their operations and submit their report. Deji Badmos, CGTN, Lagos, Nigeria.
Well, let's return now to Ouagadougou, where voters have started casting their ballots in Burkina Faso's general election. The election is taking place amid growing insecurity. Let's hear now. We can cross over to Malik Lingani for more on this. He's a political analyst joining us via Zoom from the capital, Ouagadougou. Malik, thank you for joining us on Africa Live. The country is going to the poll amidst a jihadist threat, with some areas unable to vote. How will this likely affect the outcome of that election?
Thank you for the question. I think you pinpointed the most important challenge in this election, security. In Burkina, barely half of the country are not able to vote today. But for sure, people were able to register themselves in the electoral register. If today we don't have any incidents.
Apologies for that. Malik Lingani joining us there via Zoom. You're watching Africa Live. Still ahead on the program. The coronavirus pandemic and economic recovery plan at the G20 summit. And the United States breaks a record for new coronavirus cases.
Africa is a continent of diversity, with varied climates and enchanting geography, and a people so distinct, but with a shared enduring spirit. We are at the heart of the continent to bring you the untold stories.
Let's have a look.
We celebrate Africa as it shapes its own destiny.
Tunis, Cairo,
Juba, Johannesburg,
Ethiopia, Tanzania.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Nigeria is my home. 160 million vibrant, ambitious individuals constantly seeking the perfect self-expression. It is these people who inspired me to be that person that is seen, to be a voice that is heard, and ultimately to be the anchor that I am. I have to tap in, tune in, and turn on the very best qualities within me to deliver the news. I'm Richard Nta, an anchor for CGTN.
I try to not let it affect me, but there are days when it does. I'm a human being, and to see patients in a hospital bed and their family members are not there, there's no one there to hold their hand, that human touch, you know?
I just hope everyone can remember that the situation is not permanent and that everything will get better eventually.
Leaders from the world's largest economies are meeting to discuss the coronavirus pandemic and economic recovery. This year's G20 summit is taking place virtually. Chinese President Xi Jinping has called for more cooperation among nations to fight the coronavirus and restore economic activity. Gao Yiming has more.
Saudi Arabia is chairing this year's summit virtually. On Saturday, Chinese President Xi Jinping urged the G20 nations to build a global firewall against COVID-19 as he issued a call to support the World Health Organization in mobilizing resources and distributing vaccines fairly and efficiently. Xi also called for restoring the operations of global supply chains amid a serious global economic recession. He said countries should reduce tariffs and barriers and step up efforts to coordinate key medical supplies. The Chinese president also urged the countries to pursue innovation-driven growth and underline the potential of the digital industry. He said countries should pursue more inclusive development and keep supporting developing countries in overcoming hardships caused by the pandemic. The COVID-19 has amplified economic problems in nations that were already struggling with high debt burdens. And Xi said China fully supports the G20's debt service suspension initiative and will continue working with other parties for its implementation. Gao Yiming, CGTN.
The total number of COVID-19 cases in the United States has topped 12 million. And this week saw record-breaking case numbers, forcing some local officials to bring back restrictions. U.S. President Donald Trump, though, continues to focus on disputing the results of the presidential election. Giles Gibson reports from Washington.
As the US set records for daily coronavirus cases and the death toll exceeded 250,000, the Trump administration tried to reassure the nation. Vice President Mike Pence and the White House Coronavirus Task Force briefed reporters for the first time in months, but there was no sign of President Trump himself.
And let me say personally, not a day has gone by that I haven't thought personally about families that have lost loved ones, and I want to assure each of you that you will always be in our hearts and you will remain in our prayers.
US President Donald Trump did appear on Friday, delivering remarks on prescription drug prices and the 2020 election. That's after drug companies Pfizer and BioNTech filed for an emergency use authorization for their vaccine candidate, but US regulators say it could take weeks to approve it. In the meantime, case numbers are climbing in almost every single state, leading to long lines just to get a test. The projected winner of this month's US presidential election, Joe Biden, is trying to build a new strategy to fight the virus. He held a virtual meeting with Democrat and Republican governors on Thursday.
What this meeting, along with others we've had, reinforces, in my view, is the unity the country is looking for. They're looking for us to come together and deal with problems, most of which have no ideological basis for disagreement. That's what we have to do. That's what the governors talked about.
With the White House stonewalling his transition team, though, the Biden camp is stuck on the sidelines for now. Meanwhile, millions of Americans could be staying at home next week, with health authorities recommending people cancel their travel plans for the annual Thanksgiving holiday. That's as some local officials start to reintroduce restrictions, with New York City closing its public schools this week, while Chicago is under a 30-day stay-at-home advisory, all adding up to a patchwork of different approaches in different states. Giles Gibson for CGTN in Washington.
Africa's biggest economy, Nigeria, has slipped into a recession. The country's National Bureau of Statistics published their findings in a third-quarter report. The agency blamed the slump on the COVID-19 pandemic and falling oil prices. The country's GDP has contracted for 2 consecutive quarters. The International Monetary Fund forecast Nigeria's GDP will drop by 5.4% this year. Let's get more on this now. I'm joined by Odinaka Anudu, an economist. He's joining us via Zoom from the commercial capital, Lagos. Thank you for joining us on Africa Live. Now, Nigeria has slipped into a recession. President Buhari launched the economic growth plan in 2017. Is the current state of affairs wholly attributed to the coronavirus pandemic?
Well, if you ask me whether Nigeria's recession is attributable to coronavirus, I will tell you yes, because everyone knows that the second and third quarters were characterized by lockdowns and disruption in the supply chain. But if you ask me whether the current state of Nigerian economy generally is as a result of coronavirus, I will tell you no. There have been many issues since 2016. Nigeria went into recession, and ever since then, unemployment has been rising. From about less than 10% in 2014 to now 27% in the second quarter of 2020. So there have been issues in Nigeria. For example, the current government, for instance, has what I call protectionist policies. Those protectionist policies means that, you know, the economy is not open. We're not open. Several items are still in the CBN's list of, you know, CBN list of items that cannot access foreign exchange.
Right.
So I cannot attribute this current state of the Nigerian economy to coronavirus. But if you ask me whether that quarter particularly was just about coronavirus, I would tell you yes.
So there have been many issues, as you've put it, with the Nigerian economy for years now. How can the country get out of this, particularly this recession at this point?
Well, there are many options the government has. First of all, we need to pass the budget quickly. That's the first option. Then the second option is that Nigeria has idle assets. You know, currently our debt, our foreign and domestic debt is very high, about 31 trillion naira. I mean, about $82 billion. So quite high. Nigeria doesn't have the money. We don't have the fiscal space. So what I suggest the government should do is to sell what idle assets that are worth almost $1 trillion. Sell them. The Nigerian economy is about $300 to $400 billion. So by the time you sell half of them, you have, among the size of the Nigerian economy, you spend. Because the truth is that recession is about the activities in the economy, that there is a slowing rate of activities, economic activities in the economy. So all you need to do at that point in time is to stimulate different sectors of the economy. And one of the ways you can do that is to sell these idle assets and spend in the economy. Apart from that, too, there are also other options. For instance, we also look at the foreign exchange market. It's still there are still multiple foreign exchange routes in the Nigerian economy. We need to unify that. And the Nigeria-Benin border this is where largest trade takes place. Along the West African corridor. It's still short. Nigeria has to open that because trade is shrinking. If you look at the trade for the third quarter, it's strong.
All right, Odinaku Anudu joining us there from the commercial capital, Lagos. Let's now head to South Africa, where Cape Town may have narrowly escaped the devastating effects of one of the worst droughts in over a century. But all indications are it will not be the last one. It is for this reason that the city of Cape Town is embarking on a resilience campaign to prevent another possible day zero scenario. CGTN's Travers Andrews has more.
It's a sight that was once unimaginable a few years ago. Cape Town's dams filled to 100% capacity, which has now led to water restrictions being finally lifted. The city's residents successfully soldiered through one of the worst droughts in over a century. And even though things have changed dramatically, many are still embracing a water-wise approach. Total water consumption in Cape Town has all but halved over the last few years, which is important to mitigate any impending droughts city officials believe may come in the future.
It has been a very difficult and painful period to adjust in the way that we have, but I think that we have built up a strong foundation to be resilient and sustainable going forward. And the city intends on, remaining committed to increasing water supply from a diverse set of sources, because the drought has shown us that we can't just be reliant on rainfall. It will be a constrained resource going forward. And so adaptation requires that diversification. And so the city's got a water strategy.
That water strategy includes sources such as desalination units, which came online during the peak onset of the drought and will play an important role in complementing the dam's capacity. A positive assessment at the end of the hydrological year meant that city authorities could finally slash restrictions due to the healthy state of the water supply.
Dam levels are the fullest since 2014, and so that does very clearly show great progress that has been made. I think it must be once again pointed out that last year's hydrological year actually received below average rainfall levels. This year we were incredibly lucky to receive slightly above average rainfall levels. But it is essentially been consistent low water use that has helped Cape Town and its dams to recover.
And as part of the city's diversification of its water resources, it has already begun to tap into the Table Mountain Aquifer Group, which is said to be one of the largest underground aquifers in the world, which will assist the city's efforts to bring another 300 million litres of water to the bulk supply and position Cape Town as a much more resilient city, capable of saving livelihoods when faced with any impending future droughts. Travis Andrews, CGTN, Cape Town.
You're watching Africa Live, still ahead on the program. Nigeria plans to borrow another $750 million from the World Bank amid an economic recession.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and global business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN. Accra is my kind of city. That's because when I'm here, I feel like I'm back home in Lagos or Abidjan, which are two of the major cities I grew up in. Business in Africa is high risk. After about a decade covering business news on the continent, I've learned it's all about the high risk, but also the high returns and the high energy. You simply have to adjust in order to keep pace. When I started out as a journalist, my dream was to open people's minds to the different perspectives. From the CEO in the boardroom to the trader out in the street, we all have different stories. From Accra to Addis Ababa, from Cairo to Cape Town, and I wouldn't have it any other way. Here at CGTN, we realize that Africa is on the move, and it's moving fast, but we're moving right along with it. I'm Ucheo Koronkwo, and I'm a business anchor and reporter at CGTN.
Nigeria plans to borrow another $750 million from the World Bank. The move comes amid an economic recession and a high debt profile. The government is trying to help Nigerians cope with the impact of the coronavirus pandemic. CGTN's Kelechi Emekalam tells us more.
Fashion designer Victor Felix runs a bespoke fashion store in Nigeria's capital, Abuja. Known for his signature suits and other fashion pieces, the decade-old business has generated more than 90% return on his investment. But the COVID-19 outbreak has adversely affected his sales, as social activities have drastically reduced. Sales have dropped by about 75%.
Before COVID, life was fun. We had events, we had people coming up with different things that would involve a lot of people. So the patronage was high because, you know, you're going for events, different people will dress certain ways. Many events are now virtual. So you don't need to dress for those occasions. Demands are low in terms of consumption by the consumers. And even things we used to bring in terms of our materials and things we used to work, we don't get it as much. We used to make like 20 suits before COVID in a week. So right now, we'll make like in a week 5.
But there's a ray of hope for business owners like Victor, as the government announced it's processing a fresh $750 million loan from the World Bank. Authorities say the loan is to alleviate mass poverty caused by the COVID-19 pandemic on SMEs and citizens. Government recently assessed a $114 million loan for a similar purpose from the World Bank, leaving experts skeptical about the move.
The question is, when they could not justify the usage of the previous loan, what is the need for this new loan? What are the specific projects or activities to be financed with this loan? What are the conditionalities of this loan? What are the payment plan for this loan.
Nigeria's current debt profile has been rising steadily. As at September, external debt stood at $31.47 billion. Experts say additional borrowing could pressure the already pressured economy as a huge chunk of the country's budget goes towards debt servicing. Kelechi Amekalam, CGTN Abuja, Nigeria.
Now, as South Africa strives to rebuild its tourism industry, Cape Town has started creating affordable tour packages. They have launched a new initiative called Pocket-Friendly Tourism to show locals and visitors that they can explore and enjoy the city for less. Renee Delcam has more.
Cape Town Tourism's pocket-friendly campaign is aimed at making tourism more budget-friendly and to help the mother city bounce back from the devastating economic impact of the COVID-19 lockdown.
For us, the plan is to diversify Cape Town's tourism landscape. We need to push tourism potential to all corners of the city. And the pocket-friendly campaign is specifically designed to make tourism more accessible and affordable, and ultimately to boost the visitor economy.
Cape Town Tourism has selected 6 neighborhoods as part of its pocket-friendly campaign. Right now we are in Langa, a township which has a rich history in music, sports, arts and culture.
We've produced very prominent musicians in our township. One of the world's best drummists, Tebogo Moholo, grew up in this community. He lived in London and is back here. Brenda Fassie, that used to be an African Madonna, came from this community. So you cannot come to Cape Town and skip Langa as a township. You haven't done any justice to your traveling.
Langa means the scorching sun. But because other people are struggling to mention it, we decided to shorten it and said Langa, meaning the sun. We were not named after that sun, we were named after this chief who lived back in the day.
We know that there's a perception that tourism is very expensive and it is only centered around certain parts of the city. We want to break down those barriers and we want to demonstrate through the pocket-friendly challenge that you can visit all parts of the city. And here in Langa, where we're launching the pocket-friendly, you can do pottery classes, you can do drumming, you can do the cuisine and the culture all together.
Cape Town Tourism is confident that visitors will also be able to enjoy a pocket-friendly experience in other lesser-known parts of the city, including Sea Point, Kirstenbosch, Cork Bay, Bloberg Strand and Athlone, on a budget of 150 rands or just under $10 each. Renee Delcam, CGTN, Cape Town, South Africa.
Many Kenyans often argue that stories told about their country often focuses on the negative. One artist is trying to change that narrative through his work. Using discarded metal sheets, he tells stories of slum life from the perspective of the community. CGTN's Joy Kiruki has the details.
A muddy alleyway bustling with everyday life. Life captured in these pieces of art. Art that is attracting its own attention.
These pictures, the way they are drawn, is very good. They show everything. Like me here, I sell tomatoes, onions, and bananas, just the way it is in the slum.
Adam Masava is the artist behind these scenes. He was born and raised here in Mukuru, an informal settlement in Nairobi. The artist uses corrugated iron sheets as his canvas to capture a different side of his neighborhood.
I kind of got tired of watching people talking about the negative side of slum life. So what I did is I decided to be an ambassador of the slum by showing the positive side of slum life.
Masava collects his unique medium from building sites when landlords renovate their houses.
And I burn them in a big fire to make them lose weight because they are normally well treated to avoid rust. Then after burning them, I smash them flat with a hammer then cut them into sizes of my frames. Then I stretch them on the frames. After that, I do my sketches. After doing sketches, I treat them. I only treat the parts where I want to paint, so that I leave the other spaces to have the natural look, because when you treat it, it turns it into a one dark color, which denies the iron, which denies it an opportunity to shine as a medium.
If one man's meat is another man's poison, then for Adam Masava, your trash is his platform to recreate the environment and tell the story of the slum for future generations.
The artist explains how he discovered his medium after facing rejection.
I used to bring my works to galleries or exhibitions. Some of them were rejected. And then I came back and started thinking how I can present my work in a different way. And then this idea came up, and I thank God because it has transformed me.
A transformation that won him the Mukuru Youth Initiative Best Male Fine Artist of the Year. But beyond his work, Masava is also recognized as a community worker. He set up the Mukuru Art Club in 2010, where he teaches young people for free.
As an artist, I've grown, I've been able to express myself. For example, the themes that I'm painting, they can really help other girls in the society, and also they can help other girls to inspire them to paint.
I'm trying to mentor them, trying to get them into being professional artists.
Masava says being of service to others brings him satisfaction and hopes to continue to effect change in society through his teaching and his art. Joy Kiruki Juma, CGTN, Nairobi, Kenya.
On to Somalia now, and aid agencies have found new means of delivering aid to millions of vulnerable people as COVID-19 infections continue to rise in the country. The agencies are using Somalia's intricate mobile money infrastructure to navigate the pandemic. CGTN's Abdulaziz Bello has more from Mogadishu.
Ralia Mohammed is one of thousands of displaced persons who fled conflict in the Lower Shabelle region as government forces push through with an offensive against Al-Shabaab. At this sprawling settlement on the outskirts of Mogadishu, the mother of two is among thousands receiving support from Save the Children, a UK-based humanitarian aid organization. However, with the onset of the coronavirus pandemic, assistance has been limited. Aid agencies are now providing cash transfer via mobile in efforts to limit the spread of the virus.
I fled conflict with my children in Janale at this camp. I have received assistance and am now able to prepare 3 meals for my children since we moved here. I use the remaining for the education and upkeep.
Not far from the camp lives Sitei Mose, who fled from Shelembot in Lower Shabelle.
Before the coronavirus pandemic, we used to receive $40, but now we receive $70 via mobile. This has allowed us to plan our lives. My children can now eat and receive quality education.
Dair Gedi is the program manager at Save the Children and says the country's mobile money infrastructure has played a crucial role, allowing his team to navigate the COVID-19 pandemic.
This year we have reached 60,000 families through the mobile cash transfer after signing a partnership with Homo Telecom. They send the money to beneficiaries and we verify by calling each family to confirm the amount and delivery date and time.
World Bank estimates the transaction worth approximately $2.7 billion are carried out monthly. Aid agencies are now shifting towards the system in order to reach almost 3 million people displaced by years of conflict and climate-related disasters. The best part about mobile money transfer service system in Somalia is that its clients do not incur any transfer charges, a move that has allowed aid agencies and its beneficiaries to receive money directly to their phones at no extra cost.
Due to limited movement, we created a scenario-based approach. We used the database we have for displaced persons and those benefiting from our medical assistance. The approach allowed our staff to work from home so as to protect them from contracting coronavirus, but perform required tasks as we did before the pandemic.
Statistics indicate that the penetration rate of mobile money in displaced camps stands at 72%. Leading aid agencies now say they are moving to mobile cash transfers as a likely blueprint of overcoming the pandemic and other challenges facing aid delivery in the country. Abdul Aziz Bilo, CGTN, Mogadishu, Somalia.
And we still have more news for you here on the program. Here's what's ahead. Uganda traditional banana brewing fights against being washed away by modern beer.
Join us in Global Business and see Africa through our eyes. The greatest journeys, the greatest sights, the greatest adventures.
Here in Kanata, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.
In Uganda, fans of traditional banana wine are worried that the craft is dying out due to the growing popularity of beer. But as CGTN's Hilary Ayesiga tells us, there are some still holding on to the traditional ways.
This is what keeps Moses Musisi busy, making banana wine locally known as tonto. He crushes the bananas mixed with spear grass.
I am promoting our culture, and at the same time, I earn a living.
Musisi goes through this process twice a month. It takes about an hour for Musisi to squeeze juice out of these bananas. He says it's now ready for fermentation. Fermentation takes about 2 days. In a single production, Musisi gets 140 liters, which earns him about $50. The brew is usually consumed at traditional marriages and in local bars.
We take it as an energy drink because it has natural ingredients. After a hard day's work, we consume the drink.
To increase consumption of the brew, local authorities are urging the brewers to improve their standards. They are also looking at promoting the drink for tourism.
We also encourage our people also to do it traditionally, so that people, when they are here, our visitors, not only actually visitors from out of the country, but also preserving this for the generation, so that because the generations that are coming, they must know our story.
Traditional banana wine making is still common in rural areas of Uganda, Rwanda, Tanzania, Burundi, and the Democratic Republic of Congo. And as long as brewers like Musisi keep the wine flowing, partygoers will have enough to enjoy the traditional drink. Hilary Ayesiga, CGTN, Kampala, Uganda.
In South Africa, an exciting new maritime discovery has been unearthed in Walker Bay in the Western Cape. Divers have stumbled upon the remains of what appears to be a shipwreck which has been hidden for many decades. A treasure trove of long-forgotten maritime artifacts points to evidence of a potentially significant archaeological find. CGTN's Travers Andrews has more with his report.
Walker Bay may be a famous playground for southern white whales, but beneath its depths also lies other exciting underwater treasures, including what appears to be the wreck of a historic ship. The site was discovered by a husband and wife dive team, who on a shore entry happened to come across the remains. On closer inspection, the significance of the find became increasingly clearer to them.
While doing shore dives, we came across a small piece of chain which was pointing out to sea. We then switched cylinders, went back out to the same site and then swam out to sea quite extensively, and then we found an array of chains lying on the seabed. Swimming then deeper off the reef onto the sandy bottom, we found a massive anchor to about 2.5 meters in height, and it's got an arm length also to about 2.5 meters.
Resting at a depth of around 20 meters, The artifacts and structure was detected and identified using an underwater magnetometer because visibility can get to around 3 meters. So far, a number of telling maritime artifacts have been unearthed, including some yet to be identified cultural heritage items. An early assessment by experts, though, point to it being quite old.
The anchors most match that of an Admiralty anchor. However, there have been 2 different kinds of Admiralty anchors that were used throughout history. So one with wooden stock and then one with a pure iron stock that came in. So that's how come we've managed to sort of identify that it's more to the 1850s opposed to the early 1800s because of the iron stock that was brought in, which made us, of course, extremely excited about it.
The exact location of the site is being kept a secret to prevent would-be treasure hunters from descending en masse. The South African Heritage Resources Agency has also only permitted the team to undertake a pre-disturbance site survey.
We've seen all the items that we could find just off the surface, so if there is anything else of value on the site, it's not going to be easily found, meaning it's going to be buried, attached to the reef, deep underneath the sand. And unless you're going down with massive machinery, which is going to be very obvious, you're not going to be uncovering anything.
For now, the dive team may have been the first to lay eyes on the wreck in over 150 years, but they won't be the last, because plans are also underway to eventually promote the find as a National Heritage Diving Site. This is the second most significant maritime discovery in this region since the wreck of the HMS Burkina was found. But a lot of in-depth analysis and underwater investigative work still needs to be done, including in mapping. The site does, though, open up a host of new opportunities for this seaside town, including in ecotourism. Ravsdan News, CGTN, Hermanus, South Africa.
Well, let's now take a look at your sports news. Here's what's ahead. Caster Semenya to appeal to the European